In an era marked by escalating tensions and trade disputes, the recent developments in the U.S. China economic landscape signal a pivotal moment for both nations. As President Xi Jinping navigates the complexities of international relations, he finds himself at the center of a strategic confrontation that he has long anticipated. This clash, rooted in tariffs, trade policies, and the quest for global dominance, could reshape economic alliances and geopolitical dynamics for years to come. The roots of this trade conflict can be traced back to the Trump administration's aggressive tariff impositions on Chinese goods, a strategy that aimed to curb China's rising influence. In response, Xi Jinping has strategically maneuvered to position China not only as a key supplier in global markets but also as a formidable competitor to the United States. During a 2020 meeting with senior Communist Party officials, Xi outlined an ambitious vision to bolster China's economic resilience by making global supply chains increasingly dependent on Chinese exports. Tighten international production chains' dependence on our country, he asserted, signaling a shift from a reactive to a proactive economic stance. This shift has already begun to bear fruit. Under Xi's leadership, China has ramped up its exports, particularly in critical sectors such as technology and rare earth minerals, which are essential for manufacturing everything from electric vehicles to advanced defense systems. The Chinese government reportedly directed nearly $2 trillion through its state-controlled banking system to support industrial borrowers, further enhancing its manufacturing capabilities. This aggressive approach has allowed China to retaliate effectively against U.S. tariffs, imposing its own restrictions on essential minerals that have sent prices skyrocketing and created supply chain disruptions in the United States. The stakes are high for both nations. For the U.S., the looming threat of empty store shelves and rising consumer prices has put pressure on the Biden administration to respond. The trade war has exposed vulnerabilities in American supply chains, particularly those heavily reliant on Chinese imports. As the situation escalates, American consumers are beginning to feel the impact, with higher costs for everyday goods becoming a pressing concern. Amidst this backdrop, the U.S. and China have recently engaged in high-level talks aimed at de-escalating tensions. This turnaround comes after months of heated exchanges and retaliatory measures, with both sides keenly aware of the economic ramifications of their standoff. Stephen Olson, a former U.S. trade negotiator, emphasized that neither side wants to appear weak, stating both countries have judged that they can move forward without appearing to have caved in to the other side. However, this diplomatic overture does not signal a resolution to the underlying issues. The talks are expected to focus on establishing a framework for future negotiations rather than addressing the fundamental frictions that have characterized U.S.-China relations. Experts caution that while initial discussions may yield some positive rhetoric, the deep-seated challenges, including technology transfer disputes and state subsidies, will require time and substantial effort to resolve. Moreover, Xi's recent visit to Moscow underscores the evolving geopolitical landscape. As Russia grapples with the effects of Western sanctions, its relationship with China has strengthened. Xi's presence at Russia's Victory Day parade reinforces the notion that China is positioning itself as a counterbalance to U.S. influence, with both nations deepening their economic and military ties. This partnership could present a formidable challenge to U.S. interests globally as both countries seek to reshape the international order in their favor. The ramifications of this trade conflict extend beyond immediate economic concerns. As nations around the world assess their alliances, the pressure to choose sides in the U.S.-China rivalry is mounting. Evan Medeiros, a Georgetown University professor, articulated this sentiment, stating, "The entire world is about to learn how reliant we are on trade with China and how much it's worth to us." The implications for global trade dynamics could be profound, with shifts in alliances and economic dependencies potentially reshaping the landscape of international commerce. Looking ahead, the path to resolution remains fraught with uncertainty. While both sides may be willing to engage in dialogue, the entrenched positions and mutual distrust may hinder meaningful progress. The prospect of a Phase 1 deal on steroids, as some analysts have termed it, could emerge, addressing some immediate concerns while leaving more complex issues unresolved. The world watches closely as the U.S. China trade conflict continues to unfold, with significant implications for global economic stability and geopolitical relations. As these two superpowers navigate a landscape defined by competition, cooperation, and confrontation, the future remains uncertain. The choices made in the coming months will likely shape not only the economic fortunes of both nations but also the broader international order for years to come. In a significant turn of events, the geopolitical landscape is witnessing a recalibration as China and Russia bolster their ties amidst rising tensions with the United States. This alliance, highlighted by recent meetings between Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin, marks a strategic pivot that both leaders are leveraging to challenge U.S. dominance and reshape the global order. Xi's visit to Moscow coincided with the 80th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory in World War II, where he underscored the historical bond forged through shared sacrifices against fascism. The elaborate reception at the Kremlin served as a powerful visual testament to their growing partnership, especially as Russia finds itself increasingly isolated due to its aggressive actions in Ukraine. According to Xi, the friendship between China and Russia is poised for even deeper collaboration, with both nations committed to promoting a multipolar world order. The two countries need to enhance solidarity, safeguard true multilateralism, and steer global governance towards the right direction, he stated, signaling a unified front against perceived Western hegemony. This burgeoning partnership is not merely about political camaraderie, it has profound economic implications as well. Despite the disparity in their economic scales, China's GDP vastly outstrips that of Russia. Both nations share common geopolitical interests. They are intent on establishing a new global framework that diminishes U.S. influence. Analysts note that this alignment could gather support from the global South, further complicating the existing world order. The implications of Xi and Putin's cooperation extend beyond diplomatic niceties. The two leaders are exploring strategic military collaborations, a move that could enhance their operational capacities in potential conflicts, particularly concerning Taiwan, a flashpoint for Sino-American relations. Increased joint military exercises underscore this intent, positioning both nations to project power more effectively. However, the partnership is not without its challenges. While they present a united front, underlying tensions persist, particularly regarding their respective relations with the West. As both leaders navigate their domestic and international landscapes, they must balance their ambitions with the realities of a complex global stage. Amid these developments, the U.S. finds itself grappling with the repercussions of its own foreign policy decisions. The trade conflict with China, exacerbated by the Trump administration's tariffs, has created an environment of economic uncertainty that both Xi and Putin perceive as an opportunity to redefine their positions on the world stage. They assert that U.S. actions have only served to validate their suspicions of Western intentions, further galvanizing their partnership. In conclusion, the evolving Sino-Russian alliance represents a critical juncture in international politics, with potential ramifications that could reshape global dynamics for years to come. As both nations seek to fortify their positions against a backdrop of increasing U.S. scrutiny and sanctions, the unfolding narrative suggests that this partnership is not merely a reactionary measure but a strategic recalibration aimed at establishing a new world order, one that could challenge the long-standing dominance of the United States. Future developments will likely reveal the extent to which this alliance can influence global governance and economic stability as the world watches closely. In a world where trade wars are reshaping economies and alliances, the escalating conflict between the United States and China has reached a critical juncture. As negotiations resume between Washington and Beijing amid soaring tariffs and economic pressures, the stakes have never been higher. The backdrop of these discussions is not just a battle over trade but a clash of national strategies, technological supremacy, and geopolitical influence. Chinese President Xi Jinping has long anticipated this moment. strategically positioning China to enhance its global influence while minimizing dependence on the West. Following the imposition of hefty tariffs by the Trump administration in early 2025, Xi's government has adopted a combative stance, leveraging its control over critical supply chains and resources. This approach is rooted in a vision articulated as early as April 2020, where Xi emphasized the need for China to tighten its grip on international production chains to deter foreign interference. The current trade conflict, exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, has exposed the fragility of global supply chains and highlighted the reliance of many nations on Chinese manufacturing. As she stated during a meeting with Communist Party officials, the goal is to make adversaries think twice before attempting to disrupt supplies to China. This aggressive economic posture has yielded significant results. According to data from China's central bank, Xi has directed nearly $2 trillion into industrial sectors, enabling China to maintain its status as the world's manufacturing hub. As the Trump administration retaliated with tariffs on Chinese imports, the dynamics shifted. China responded with its own tariffs and export restrictions on critical minerals essential for high-tech industries, and the U.S. prices for these minerals have surged, causing concern among American consumers and businesses alike. According to Argus Media, prices of certain critical minerals have tripled since the implementation of these restrictions, raising fears of empty shelves and heightened inflation in the U.S. In this high-stakes environment, the geopolitical ramifications are profound. The rivalry between the two nations is not limited to trade but extends into technological domains, notably artificial intelligence. Experts warn that this competition may further fragment the global economy into opposing spheres of influence, forcing countries to choose sides. Evan Medeiros, an Asian studies professor at Georgetown University, cautions that China is prepared to wield its economic power to inflict pain on any nation aligning with the U.S. Despite the tense negotiations taking place in Switzerland, the outcome remains uncertain. Both sides are under immense pressure to deliver results for their domestic constituencies, as the trade war has inflicted damage on both economies. In the U.S., factory output has dipped and consumer sentiment has plummeted, leading to concerns about a technical recession. Trump's tariffs, initially framed as a means to bolster American industry, have drawn criticism as detrimental to the economy, with leading economists warning of significant downturns. Meanwhile, China's economy is also feeling the strain, although it shows resilience in its approach. Xi's government has doubled down on self-reliance, leveraging the trade conflict to reinforce its narrative of resisting Western coercion. As China diversifies its trade relationships, particularly in the global south, it has seen a 21% spike in exports to Southeast Asia, demonstrating a strategic pivot away from reliance on the U.S. market. Amidst this complex backdrop, Xi's recent visit to Moscow further complicates the narrative. In a show of solidarity with Russia, she condemned U.S. sanctions and framed the Sino-Russian partnership as a counterbalance to Western hegemony. This alignment underscores the shifting dynamics of global power as both nations navigate their respective challenges while seeking to exploit opportunities for growth and influence. As the U.S. and China engage in talks, the immediate future remains uncertain. While both sides appear willing to negotiate, significant obstacles loom on the horizon. The systemic frictions that have characterized the U.S.-China trade relationship are unlikely to dissipate easily, and any agreements reached may only scratch the surface of deeper issues, such as technology transfers and state subsidies. In conclusion, the ongoing trade conflict between the U.S. and China is not merely an economic dispute, it is a reflection of larger strategic ambitions and the quest for global dominance. As both nations grapple with the consequences of their actions, the world watches closely, aware that the outcomes will have profound implications for international trade security and the balance of power in the years to come. The question remains, who will ultimately blink first in this high-stakes showdown? In a significant move to strengthen its defense relations with Africa, China is currently hosting nearly 100 military officers from 40 African nations. This initiative, which runs until May 15, has gathered young and mid-level officers from countries such as Egypt, Kenya, Mozambique, and Tanzania. The visit includes educational tours of prominent military academies in Beijing, Changsha, and Shaoshan, where the officers will gain insights into China's military systems and advanced technologies. This engagement reflects China's broader strategy to cultivate long-term military ties across the African continent. Observers note that by focusing on younger military personnel, China is strategically positioning itself to build enduring relationships that align with the future leadership of these nations' armed forces. Sun Yun, director of the China program at the Stimson Center, remarked on the significance of this delegation, emphasizing that these officers represent the future pillars of military leadership in their respective countries. China has a long game and is cultivating ties from the grassroots, she stated, highlighting the importance of fostering connections at this level. This event marks the fourth time the Chinese Ministry of National Defense has organized such a gathering, with the National University of Defense Technology in Changsha serving as the host. The ministry's official statement outlined that the visit aims to deepen the traditional friendship between the Chinese and African militaries and enhance mutual understanding between younger and mid-career officers from both regions. The initiative aligns with President Xi Jinping's commitment made during the previous Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Summit, where he pledged to invite 500 young African military officers to China and provide training for 6,000 military personnel by 2027. Additionally, as part of a broader military engagement strategy, China has allocated 1 billion yuan, approximately $138.5 million in military aid to bolster its global security initiative, further underlining its commitment to strengthening defense partnerships with African nations. Ilaria Carrozza, a senior researcher at the Peace Research Institute Oslo, remarked on the implications of this outreach, noting that it reflects Beijing's strategic push to deepen defense ties with Africa through military diplomacy. By engaging future military leaders early, China aims to cultivate long-term influence, build trust, and promote its military education and technology models, Carrozza explained. As China continues to enhance its military partnerships globally, the implications for African nations are profound. This initiative not only represents a shift in military training and cooperation, but also signals China's intent to assert its influence within a continent that has traditionally been under the sway of Western powers. The outcomes of such collaborations could reshape the geopolitical landscape, as African nations may increasingly look to China for military training and support, potentially redefining alliances and partnerships in the region. Looking ahead, the deepening of these ties suggests a future where China could play a more prominent role in African defense strategies, fostering a new paradigm of military cooperation that may have far-reaching consequences for both regions. As the global balance of power continues to evolve, the ramifications of China's strategic military outreach to Africa will undoubtedly be a key area to watch in the coming years. In an increasingly volatile global landscape, the relationship between the European Union and China has emerged as a critical pivot point for stability. Charles Michel, the former president of the European Council, articulated this sentiment during a recent forum in Shanghai, emphasizing the necessity for both entities to manage their competitive dynamics with care and responsibility. Michel's comments come at a time when tensions between the EU and China have shown signs of easing, with both sides lifting restrictions on reciprocal exchanges. This marks a significant step toward fostering deeper interactions and enhancing mutual understanding. As Michel noted, stability and predictability is in everyone's interests. His assertion highlights the importance of a relationship built on its own merits, free from the influence of external powers. Michel's remarks resonate strongly given the backdrop of a world order facing persistent challenges, including geopolitical rivalries and economic pressures that threaten to destabilize established alliances. The backdrop of this renewed focus on EU-China relations coincides with the 50th anniversary of their diplomatic ties, which was celebrated this month. Chinese President Xi Jinping reached out to EU leaders, advocating for a sound and stable partnership that promises benefits for both parties and the global community. This diplomatic overture underscores a mutual recognition of the need for collaboration amidst rising global uncertainties. particularly in light of recent crises that have tested the resilience of international relations. The diplomatic thaw between China and the EU contrasts sharply with the ongoing tensions between the United States and China, particularly regarding trade policies. As the US and China prepare for high-stakes negotiations in Switzerland, the narrative around who initiated the discussions has turned into a diplomatic sparring match. This rhetorical exchange reflects deeper issues of leverage and pride in international relations. As U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese officials publicly dispute the origins of the talks, analysts observe that such posturing serves as a proxy for the broader competition between the two nations. Craig Singleton, a senior director at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, explained that the obsession with who reached out first is a proxy fight over leverage. This assertion highlights how both sides are trying to maintain narratives that reinforce their positions domestically and internationally. Notably, the upcoming discussions are set against the backdrop of heavy tariffs that have strained the economic ties between the US and China, with both sides struggling to find common ground amid escalating pressures. As both the EU and the US navigate their respective relationships with China, the implications for global trade and geopolitics are profound. The EU's approach of fostering stability through constructive engagement could serve as a counterbalance to the more adversarial stance adopted by the US. This divergence in strategies raises important questions about the future of global trade dynamics and the potential for a multipolar world order that could emerge from current tensions. Looking ahead, the evolution of EU-China relations will be closely watched as a barometer for broader geopolitical trends. If both parties can sustain a trajectory of cooperation and dialogue, it may pave the way for a more stable international environment, one that is increasingly necessary in a world under constant attack from various systemic challenges. The coming months will be critical in determining whether the recent signs of rapprochement are merely temporary or indicative of a more enduring partnership that benefits not only Europe and China but the global community at large.